Hello, and welcome to Kiss My Assparagus podcast. I'm your host, Latasha, and today I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Love. Dr. Kayla Love is a biochemist led wellness brand founded by Dr. Kayla. She creates natural science based products for hair, skin, and overall health. She serves both individuals and brands through a ready made product line, custom formulations, and white label services. Her mission is to empower underserved communities with access to effective products and science backed education that builds confidence and promotes autonomy over one's body. She's also a mompreneur, and her credentials include a PhD from the University of Southern California, and that's in chemistry with a concentration in biochemistry. She also has a master's degree from Cal State, a chemistry degree with biochemistry concentration there as well. And she also has a BS in chemistry from Langston University. If you could help me welcome Dr. Love to the stage. Hi, Dr. Love.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. It's definitely good to have you on the show today. So I just want to jump right into it. First, let me maybe turn my volume down because I'm getting a little echo and feedback.
Let me come a little bit closer.
Tell me, as a scientist and entrepreneur, how do you balance rigorous biochemistry with the often anecdotal nature of wellness trends when developing your product?
Well, I think that it goes hand in hand. It's so important to know that, okay, if this aspect is natural, this plant or this compound, how does it work? What's the chemical process that's happening inside of it? Because that's what we're all looking for. We want to know, exactly how it works. And just understanding the science about how it works helps it to be more effective because you know what you're specifically targeting.
Gotcha, understood. Now, looked at your site and I seen you do skin, hair. You also do some herbs as well. I did see some like soursop leaves and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So you founded Dr. Love Care to serve underserved communities. What unique challenges have you seen in these communities?
I would say the number
How do you
one
feel
thing is
like your
the
brand can bridge the gap?
yeah, oh sorry. Yeah, I think the education. People don't just want a product, they want to know that it works. And I think that the best way for people to know how it works is knowing how the mechanisms are going on in the body. Our products are formulated to say, for example, we have an alkaline infused oil with saw palmetto. It regulates the DHT hormone in the body. DHT hormone imbalance is responsible for hair loss in 85% of men and 50% of women. And so when they say, oh, I need to have something to balance my hormones, you give them key words. And I think that when they know that, then even when they're looking at other brands, they can say, well, is it targeting, my hormones? Does it have saw palmetto? A lot of times people want the explanation. They want it to be clear, explained in a way that they can understand and be affordable.
Gotcha, understood. That's definitely in my field a big challenge is education for people, having them understand what's going to keep them healthy. And oftentimes it's not Western medicine. So,
Yeah.
and can you walk us through your approach to product formulation?
Yeah, product formulation is really fun for me. So the part the way we do it is we talk to our clients, about what they want. We have like our standard line of products, but we're always listening to that feedback. Somebody may come to me and say, "Hey, Kayla, I have some pain in my back. And do you have anything for that?" And if at the time, which at the time I didn't, I said, "Okay, that's noted. I'm gonna create something for pain relief." And then it worked. It worked. Not only did it help that client, it kind of set the strength. I got to get feedback about how strong this product needs to be, or this is not strong enough for me to create a standard. And so every time a person comes to me, about like a different condition or something for their hair, something for their health. I notate it all, so that when we come out with product lines, we kind of come out with something that people are looking for. And then we do our quality control testing. That's always very important for us. We have a collaboration with UCLA. It's a chemist. He has another collaboration through his company called Elements of Equity, where they do all the quality control. So they want to make sure every product that we have is ethically sourced, that the compounds are stable, that it is quality. So all those checks and balances, those that helps my brand, it helps the consumer, and we're all working together.
Nice. I like that. So you offer both ready-made products and white label services. So
Mhm.
how do you maintain scientific integrity while also allowing other brands to build on your formulations?
Yeah, I think with brands, they really want the same thing as customers. They want the education. They just want me to confirm, like, hey, I want to create a product for skincare. I'm working with the brand right now. They want a skincare line, and so they have their ingredients that they already want, and so they want me. The first thing they ask is, what you think about these ingredients? And I say, this is great. That might be a little bit too harsh, on the skin. You may want to consider this, because they want to know that their research, or I mean, not their research, their product is going to be backed by science and it's going to support the skin. And so I try to kind of build on what it is that they want and leave space for, okay, we can tweak this here and there. And if I feel like, this is not ethical or this is not a good balance, I don't have to take every client. I have the option. So I try to make sure that I'm just communicating and getting them what they want.
But as a mother and business owner, how do you approach wellness at home? Are there non-negotiable rituals or principles you follow for your family?
Yeah, I think the biggest ritual is, practicing self-love. So you have to know that you love yourself. Because all my kids, they know the products like the back of their hand because they hear me talk about them so much. But if you don't instill that, hey, when you look in the mirror, I love the way that I look. I love my natural hair. I love my skin. And then when you have that, feeling of self-love, then you have, a sense of, well, I want to make sure I take care of this thing that I love. So I try to always make sure when we're talking, we're explaining, about why we're choosing this for our health. The conversation always goes back into, self-care, self-love, and self-acceptance.
With so many wellness brands on the market, there's a ton nowadays.
Yeah.
What sets your brand apart, do you feel, scientifically and ethically?
I think the a lot of brands are not backed by science on the education side. They may say that this product is good for this, but being able to give an in-depth explanation. Being very transparent about the ingredients and why they're chosen. We are very specific about what we choose. So when it's something that's um, backed by science and it's something that you can see the person that formulates, you can see that they look like you, that they are someone that you can relate to. I think that's very important, and we try to make sure we're very transparent. I used to be just in the lab, like I was always doing research in the lab, doing online sales, but I seen my business and my brand grew when I got outside and I started doing events and connecting with the community. And that's one thing our brand is big on, making sure that we connect with the culture, with our community.
I did want to talk to you about the great interest in alkaline veganism.
Hmm.
I believe like a lot of people do need education around the compensatory mechanisms that the body already possesses. Um, and I just wanted to discuss that and see what your take on it was. How the body regulates pH and how sometimes it's not necessary to go extreme like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say So when we're talking about the body regulating pH, that's usually the lungs and the kidneys. So the lungs is doing a lot of work. When your body is too in an acidic state is where diseases typically thrive. Your body is going to start, your lungs are going to start to produce more carbon dioxide, increase your breathing rate, to release the carbon dioxide. That increases the pH to where you're alkaline. Your body likes to be around a pH 7, to be able to carry out the mechanisms it needs. And then when it's too high, then your breathing starts to slow down and your body wants to come down to a more balanced state. The kidneys, it has the same functions. It's going to regulate the hydrogen ions, the bicarbonate, to make sure that everything stays in this balanced pH system. And then when you say go to extreme, are you saying like as far as the diet?
I would say as far as the diet, because I do believe that for most people who are starting out, especially,
Mm-hmm.
they can still be healthy on a whole food plant-based diet. I think going to an alkaline diet is just, a personal preference. But I do think you can be pretty healthy on a whole food plant-based diet without going toward, raw or completely alkaline.
Yeah, I think that in that it's important to learn like your blood type. Different blood types are better for different diets. I think that education is always key. Just to know what it is that you want to put in your body. I say be extreme. About I want to be okay. I want to be healthy. I want to take care of myself. You should not compromise that. You don't have to be extreme like to where you're paranoid. Like, oh, I can't eat this. I gotta eat that. Now it's like now you're just paranoid. And you don't want to eat nothing. you know, don't overdo it. Use discernment. When you eat something like my nephew, he just ate some chocolate and it wasn't like the good quality chocolate. It was like the little Easter egg, and he was like, "Man, my stomach hurt." like, and I said, pay attention to how that made you feel. you know, do you want to feel like that? And he's like, nah, I don't want to feel like that. Well, now don't eat that. Some people will say, well, it's okay. If my stomach hurt, I get a little sick because I know I'm lactose intolerant and I shouldn't be touching that ice cream because I want it right now. Okay, that's what you accepted. You made that choice that, you want to deal with the consequences. So that's your choice. You can be as balanced as you want to be with your diet. So it's the biggest thing is non-judgment. If you don't judge other people because they have a different diet, share the education, see if that's the path for them. Let people do what works for them. At the end of the day, it's about sharing information. And when you have all the pieces connected, something that you may have known back when you was in the third grade, might have been told some good advice about fruits, vegetables, and things, and you may be like, "Nah, I don't eat that," and then it may come back like 10 years later and say, like, you know what? Actually, I do want to try that now. I want to see how that makes me feel. So I think that aspect of non judgment, but take care of your health.
Yeah, I think that's important. Definitely to, keep an open mind. And also, like you mentioned before, just listening to your body. It's like the most simple thing that you can do for your health. Like, how does this make you feel when you ingest this? How do you feel afterward? If you don't feel
Mhm.
great, you might not need it in your diet.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what it is. Even on the terms of like when they say in moderation, or you just can eat this. Like some stuff really just is not good for you. Like you can do everything in moderation. Like let's say you want to eat fruit in moderation, but fruit has some pesticides and it has these things that can be bad for you. Well, red meat, it has its properties and that can be bad for you. If you just say, okay, well, everything can be bad for me. Well, red meat takes about 3 days to process in the body, and if there's any toxins, now you're giving it room to grow versus fruit flushes through your system, a lot quicker and you can continue to treat your body with the nutrients. So you just have to discern, what is working for you in moderation or not in moderation, or what moderation looks like for you. All of that is important.
Absolutely. So your academic journey spans 3 universities. We
Hmm.
mentioned your credentials earlier, a PhD in chemistry. How has the rigorous training shaped your views on wellness, especially when it comes to debunking common myths?
I think that um, I think it starts actually before the education, because you have to start with your passion. And I always had a passion, for health and wellness. I always had a passion for hair care. I also had a passion for, wanting to be in just in shape, making sure that I'm eating healthy. And so when I got to go into science, the rigors of, if anything, were, oh, you shouldn't be in this field, or you should experience imposter syndrome, those type of things. And then I would say, well, there has to be something here for me to learn if you don't want me in this space, so the more that I learned and more it stuck with it, no matter how challenging it got, it just made everything worth it to be able to have the information that I needed to, support, my community. And I think, Langston University is a small HBCU. So you HBCUs, they give you this sense of pride. I love them. You go to an HBCU and they just tell you the shit for 4 or 5 years. And then when you go into like a predominantly white institution, which I did when I went to my PhD at USC, and in my master's program, that's when they were telling me like, oh, you're going to experience imposter syndrome. I'm like, well, no, you can't tell me what I'm going to experience. The experience is what I make it. Another student chimed in like, no, you making me feel uncomfortable, by telling me I have to feel and experience a certain thing. When I got to USC, anything that I dealt with, it was more of, well, you don't need to get your PhD to work in health and wellness. You can leave. You don't need to. I even had a professor at another institution I transferred from. Like, you don't need to come to my office hours. You're gonna pass anyways. I'm like, no, I'm here to learn. I'm here to complete this, and I want to be able to do this at a high level. I'm not going anywhere. So I think that the most important thing is, you come in and you remember, like, no, this is our shit. We understand health and wellness, and a lot of stuff has been hidden from us. And when we open these books and we get into these spaces, we always thrive. It's undeniable. We just have to stick with it. And then you can be the reflection, for that next, young girl or young man that comes in and they look like you, or even if they don't look like you, that may be going through the same challenges as you. So it's a beautiful process, and it makes it so much worth it when you can just pour back into the community coming from that, challenge.
Yeah, I totally get that. I went to a PWI myself, but I am familiar with Langston in Oklahoma, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I went to the University of Texas in Arlington.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Mhm.
yeah. So I totally get the bias, even in the information and the knowledge that you're receiving. I always wrote my papers, and they were always leaning toward, Black history, African American advocacy, because, when you look in healthcare in general, it's always a bias toward our healthcare outcomes. And the way it's presented, it seems like it's more so about our genetics versus our socioeconomic status and the stressors that we deal with and all of those other things. Those things matter. And that's
That's
why we
exactly.
have these issues. It's not because of being African American or Hispanic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
And the
want
material
to.
definitely emphasizes that.
Yeah, because I had a very, very great conversation a few days ago about that, whether this is genetics versus what we're going through on a social economic status. Like, if they have not did any DNA test on you, like, they can't, nobody should be telling you that you are genetically predispositioned for something. Was a genetics test done? or they just see a trend based upon what we were given and the type of things we were exposed to, which comes down to the social economic standpoint, like high blood pressure. High blood pressure is prevalent in our community because of the diet that we were given, when we got here. It's not the diet that we used to eat. So a lot of things is, when we change the way we live, we start to see like, oh, well, how come I'm doing a little bit better now, or how come now that I have these resources, I'm doing a little bit better now with my health? It's because it's not necessarily genetics, and even if it is genetics, they don't talk to you about your whole body has a gene repair system. Like it's a very well studied field. Anybody can Google it and say gene repair. Not gene repair made in the lab, the system in your body to repair your genes. So it's important that we eat, foods that you can look up foods and say, what foods support my gene health? So you can't lean on genetics as a crutch. There's options.
Exactly. And I think people are starting to understand that a lot better. I think for patients, I mean, seeing them on a daily basis, they still don't get it. We're like, oh, it runs in my family. It's genetic. No, it's not.
That's a lie.
That's
That's
not the
that's a
issue. It's
condition
not the
lie.
primary issue.
Like
So,
did you run through your family? Like, did you run the genetic test through your whole family? Back to see what a line starts to see. Like you'll see a lot of it is just a lot of people, we pass down habits, eating habits. We pass down lifestyles. We pass down stress through epigenetics. We pass down a lot of things that are not just, you know, it's just in my gene. It's a lot of time we're passing down a lifestyle.
mhm. And I think even I'm not sure exactly what age range you're in, and I won't be nosy and ask, but at in our childbearing years, it's
Hmm.
important to think about that as well because we're passing down that junk DNA to our offspring. I don't think people think about that. Like, do you want to have the best body before you have children? I mean, a lot of our community does not even think about that, and you know there's all sorts of issues that children are having nowadays. It's a combination of a lot of things that, I won't try to get into because of course it's not my area of expertise, but I think it's something we need to think about a little bit more. Not only the nutrition, but like what you're doing is, think about the products that you're putting on your hair, on your skin,
Hmm.
on your body. It's very important.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that because um, a lot of times what they say, and it comes from a lot of conditioning when we're told you need to eat for two. I had a client and she told me, she was like, well, I was told to eat for two. Eat twice as healthy. Eat twice the meal. Eat twice as much fruits. Eat twice as much whole grains. Eat twice as much well-rounded, dishes. Eat twice. But if you're eating twice as healthy, now if you're eating twice as bad, then you're exposing yourself and then your child to, potential complications. So you want to make sure that it's expanded. Eat for two, eat twice as healthy, not eat like trying to lose like losing weight and I'm not getting enough nutrients. Like no, double your portions, but make sure that they're healthy portions and they're healthy choices. So yeah, absolutely.
So if you could change one thing about the public's perception about health and wellness, what would it be? And how is Dr. Love Care working to shift this narrative?
I think that I already know the biggest thing I would change. That you don't take information, based upon a person's title. You don't look at me in my white coat and you say, okay, so she knows what she's talking about. You say, she's giving me this information. Let me ask her some questions because you have to understand that, yes, I have a white coat, but I'm also a human being. There's people who like the health field because they like helping people. There's people who like the health field because they like medicine. There are scientists who like science because they like science, may not like people. You know, you need to know that a person, the person that you're talking to is a person. And then when it says research says that, what research? Look into it. You know, understand that a lot of research that is done, you don't see it in the mainstream news when papers get retracted. You know, the research wasn't actually done. They just wrote stuff on a piece of paper and said, this is what the experiment, this is what the results were, and this is what the data is. So it's important to ask questions, understand. And then when I see a lot of people, I get a lot of great questions. And I like it because I try to stay open with people, you know, when it comes to health and wellness. And those the same exact questions that people say, you know, that don't make sense. Why should I do that? And my doctor said this, you know, ask them, talk to them, you know, and then say, let me do my own research. Let me start questioning things, you know, and try to get to know people. So that's why I always say it's important to, you know, speak to people, you know, like they're human. Make sure that the doctor, even you as a nurse, because you're working close with patients, you know, we're speaking in a language that can be understood. I was always told, you know, if you explain, you know, your research in a way that's very complicated, that your grandmother can't understand, then you're not doing a good job. That doesn't make you a good scientist, because you want to make sure things are broken down and they say, okay, I can flow with that, you know. And even if people don't receive the information, that's fine. But, you know, you explain it to them the best that they can. You offer them the opportunity, you know, you encourage them to, you know, research and look it up and take everything with a grain of salt. And at the end of the day, listen to your body. Listen to your body. Your body's going to tell you. It don't matter what, you know, Latasha says. It doesn't matter what Dr. Love says. What does your body say? That's gonna tell you everything that you need to know. So that's my biggest advice.
I do want to talk about your products.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen that you deal with a lot of hair care products that help with, you know, follicular damage, alopecia, and a lot of Black women deal with traction alopecia. Like that's the
Yeah.
thing. You know, my edges is just going all the way back. So I did want to know what ingredients you use in those products. I'm going to put your link down at the bottom with your website and everything, so the audience can go and purchase. But can you talk about the products for traction alopecia, and can you explain to the audience what traction alopecia actually is and how it can possibly be reversed?
Okay, yeah. So we have two products. So we have an alkaline detoxifying black soap. And detoxification is very important when it comes to pulling out the inflammation out of the scalp. A lot of times, traction alopecia is due to, you know, it can be a little bit traumatic actually, like, you know, pulling in the tension that's caused. There can also be inflammation in the scalp from the type of products that we put into our hair, the buildup. And a lot of times we need to detox the scalp. So our black soap blends, they're infused with burdock. Burdock, a lot of people take burdock to cleanse the blood. It's also a natural way to detoxify the scalp and the skin. So you pull the toxins out first. So this is one of our like big MVPs when it comes to, you know, let's start with a clean slate, and so that we can get the scalp in a healthy state. And then our other product is our alkaline infused oil. And so these oils are very nutrient rich. They're also infused with the saw palmetto. Saw palmetto regulates the DHT hormone responsible for hair loss, like as I mentioned, in 50% of women and 85% of men. And so a lot of times the alopecia that we're dealing with is, like I said, is linked to inflammation, is linked to stress. And when that DHT hormone is off balance, it's actually going to cause the follicles to shrink. And then it's going to shrink so much to where the hair falls out, the hair becomes thin, and you eventually have less follicles over time. And so our goal is to, you know, let's come on, we got to reactivate these follicles. We got to balance everything else. So we do that, and we do that naturally. Oh, yeah.
What other products do you sell as well?
And so we also support internal health because everything starts in the inside first. So we have our sea moss alkaline sea moss smoothies, which are very nutrient rich to have the minerals that activate the proteins in the body for them to function. So if you have proteins in your, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm eating my proteins. I'm eating my proteins. Are they activated? That's the key thing when people talk about how many minerals sea moss has. It's going to bind to the protein, activate it, and start the reaction for, our skin follicle, our scalp follicles to regenerate, our skin follicles to regenerate. Once all of that's happening, then we can start to get into, okay, now this process is working. We also have Shilajit on our website now. So Shilajit is a resin. It comes from the Himalayas. It's great because it's rich in folic acid. Now, folic acid is going to absorb more nutrients out of the foods that you eat. So every time you eat, when you have enough folic acid in there, it's gonna pull all the nutrients that you need. And so that way, sometimes we eat, we may not even be fully getting all the nutrients out. And what you put in your body, it flows right through your bloodstream. You have blood vessels that are right underneath your scalp. So you want to make sure that that blood vessel, what's coming out of your hair oil, is not just oil. It's not just oil that comes out your scalp. There's nutrients in that oil, nutrients that you receive from your diet. So that inflammation is coming in, through you first before it comes out and lands on the scalp. So we try to, what we do, we balance, external care and internal care.
Nice. I love that. So you have the products for internal, the products for, you have lotions and like moisturizers and stuff like that for skin. Do you have any products in particular for like those suffering with like acne and stuff like that?
Well, for acne, we do recommend like our detox blends. However, I am coming out with the line with another brand that I'm designing for. And there's a specific, with supporting acne and hyperpigmentation as well. But our products are all formulated to make sure that, you're not going to have more acne, um, what's it called? The saw palmetto, it also regulates the skin oils. So sometimes the skin it overproduces oil, and that results in acne. So saw palmetto being in the base of our ingredients, it won't lead to, a breakout. It's going to support the skin's health.
So what kind of diet do you suggest for those wanting to have like the optimal skin?
I think that you don't want to do too much heavy fats. A lot of that times, like the nuts and the red meat, that can cause you to break out. Alkaline is very good because when your body is in an acidic condition, your body just has this natural mechanism to where now I got to breathe more, I got to work more, I got to pump out more carbon dioxide. Now, if your body is tied up doing this, what's getting neglected? A lot of times your body goes into survival mode, and it's like we're just over here trying to fix this problem. We're gonna get to that when we get to that, and then other parts of your body is suffering. So I would say, always try to incorporate something alkaline into your diet that you like. Very rich fruits. Berries are important. Soursop is top tier. There's also just general fruit, peaches, mangoes. Incorporate your greens, juice. Juicing is very, very important because if you're drinking smoothies are great. But when you juice, it's a lot more actually stringent. So now it's pulling a lot more of toxins out and giving your body a chance to, rejuvenate and then go into autophagy and start eating up all the toxins. So I would say juicing is very, very important. You will see the difference on your skin. People will compliment you because when you're flushing out toxins, not just eating healthy, but flushing. Don't you put healthy food in your body, but you detox to flush everything out, because you don't want to keep the toxins in there. And then you'll see your glow is going to be different or it's going to change.
Nice. So, certain people are like demonizing juicing for the sugar spikes and stuff like that. But I definitely have seen a difference when I was juicing. So I just put that away. But I do see a lot of people just trying to demonize it because, there's a lot of sugar in the juicing. And, since you're, getting rid of the fiber and all of the like roughage, it's going straight to your bloodstream. But
Yeah, you
sad
can
that a lot
critique
of people want to keep on stuff
anything.
at work.
Yeah, because everything has a balance. Like, you everything is gonna have something to criticize. It doesn't matter what you do. If you say I'm just gonna eat the whole fruit, you're gonna criticize that. If you say, oh, I'm just gonna, like you said, blend it into a smoothie, so people gonna criticize that. It's about did I get a difference? You know, is my blood sugar spiked? Let me go check my my stats. Let me go to the doctor and go get my numbers and stuff. And you say, oh no, this is working for me, so I'm gonna do that, and let that be that.
So what do you think about Western medicine? Do you, use a combination? Do you collaborate with those in the medical field that are more on the allopathic side, or what's your take on that?
I don't think Western medicine is like it's not the standard. It's honestly it's not when it comes to treatments for like hospitals and things like you go to like me personally. I think like getting your labs done. Going to a good doctor to get your labs done, getting your X-rays done. That's important. And I think that a lot of times with Western medicine, we're not, especially as African Americans, included, in a lot of like how things are done. It's kind of like food. When you want to eat certain food, you want it to be cooked by a certain person to get a certain flavor, right? When we're not a part of the creation process, now we have a product and it might not have the flavor that we need. A lot of times what you need is oftentimes where you're from. And where we're from is not here in American medicine. And it's not um, targeting us. A lot of times they're targeting a white woman. And for a perfect example is black men's skin. I'm working on a line for another brand. Black men's skin is 3 times thicker, than women's in general. So when a man puts on a product on his skin, it's not working. Black man, he wondering why. Like, now I'm using the best Olay, I'm using the best this and that. Well, it wasn't made for you. Black women's skin, our skin has a different composition, than other races. So is that product, when it says it was tested on different skin types, was it just tested on 3 different white women for oily, dry, and combination skin? Was it tested on us? I don't see too many of us getting surveys in the mail to be a part of the studies. So maybe, we have to look at where is the stuff that's for us, made by us. So a lot of times when I do research, I try to go back, to the source, where our healing was happening, a lot more rapidly. And it definitely wasn't up here with American Western medicine. So
Yes, I totally agree, honestly. Me personally, I work in the emergency department, and I think it's definitely necessary to have that, right? In, traumatic injuries, et cetera, stuff like that. But for chronic illness, it's not beneficial. Like, honestly, to me, I just see patients going in the opposite direction of health once they get caught up in that system. So, you know, to be able to have options like yourself and those others in the wellness space that are offering quality products that are natural and don't have a bunch of chemicals in it, it's great. I'm definitely going to get some products myself, and we're going to go ahead and put the ticker back up here with all your information. Check out the website, guys. Buy products. She has quality products. If y'all have any questions for her. So thank you, Dr. Love. It's been a pleasure. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
thank you too. You take care.